VLOOKUP is definitely a great function to have, but it's not the final answer when it comes to lookup functions. So before we go ahead and explore other lookup functions, it's better to understand some of VLOOKUP's use case applications and some of its drawbacks as well. So in this particular video, we have a sheet which contains shipment details. So we have a unique order ID and a unique shipment reference here, right? So we have a whole bunch of columns. I think there are about 26, 27 columns out here, right? So let's say we want to have a summarized view of these columns. And that's where we have another column here where we have the order ID and a bunch of maybe 3 columns here that we have specified from the main shipments sheet, right? So if I were to change the order ID, let's say 1371, it goes and picks up the corresponding customer name, city, and address from this sheet. So that can be achieved using the VLOOKUP function as well. So let's see how we can create something really dynamic. So I can just go in and change one more order ID here and see how this works. So let's say 1373, and I can see that the values are changing accordingly. So let's first explore how we can achieve this using the VLOOKUP function. So I'll just go and delete all these things over here, and let's start with the VLOOKUP function. Okay, right. So now the first thing we have is the lookup value. So the value that we're going to look up is the order ID. So I'm going to go and select the order ID, right? I'll also freeze this because I don't want the order ID selection to change. So I'll use function F4 to freeze that cell. And then the table array, where do I want to look up this particular value? So I have the shipment sheet, which contains a data table that is called shipments. So my data table is called shipments. I'm going to select that. Okay. And then the column index number. Okay. So now this is where it can get a little manual, right? Because I do not know which column number the customer name exists. So rather than counting manually and searching for the column number, I could automate this. All right, so we can create a very dynamic formula. I can use the column function along with indirect to actually find out the column number. So I'll use column indirect, and then the reference text here for indirect would be the name of the data table, correct? And I will open the square bracket to specify the column name, but then I would close the quotation, use the ampersand symbol because I'm going to combine it with the column name here, which is specified. So column name here is customer name. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to combine it with the close square bracket, okay, using the ampersand symbol. Okay, so that makes my formula a lot more dynamic. So this would actually help me to pick up the column number rather than manually specifying it. So then I will do that. So I'm done with the column index number, and then last is the range lookup. So the range lookup, I want the exact match. That means order ID is unique. So I want the exact match. So it should be 0. And I run that. Perfect. So I get the company name. So what is the benefit of doing something like this? The thing is, now if I were to drag the formula, perfect. So I get the city, I get the address. I didn't have to manually go and change anything. I didn't have to go and change the column number as well. So let's look at some other benefits here. If I go into the shipments and let's say I want to, so what do we have here? We have the customer name, city, and address. Okay, let's say I want something else from here. I'm going to pick up the salesperson. Okay, so instead of address, let me go and change this to salesperson. Wow, that's really good, right? So I don't have to go and manually change the formula. I can just go and change the header over here. And since I've used column and indirect, it just fetches the corresponding column number. So this works really great. So I have a very dynamic summary over here based on the change of order ID. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it works really well. But then I have another unique reference column here, which is called as the shipment reference. So even that is a unique column. Perfect. So I'm going to use that to fetch the value. So let's say instead of order ID, I'm going to say shipment reference. And instead of 1369, what is the shipment reference? 1369-789. So I'm going to use that 1369-789. Okay. So now our lookup values are not working. The formulas are returning an error. But why? Because this value is there in the shipments data sheet, but still it's not able to fetch the value. What could be the problem? Well, this is because of how the lookup function actually works. The lookup function always finds, the lookup value that you are specifying always has to be the leftmost column in the table array. So when we specified the order ID, it was the leftmost column in our array. So it was right. So it did manage to pick up the values. But when we changed it to the shipment reference 1369789, that was not part of the leftmost column. So the leftmost column is order ID. So here the leftmost column is not shipment reference. So it will not work. So this is one rule that is has to be followed when you use the VLOOKUP function. So the moment you do that, our formula fails. So then we'll have to manually go and change our table array so that the selection is always starting from the second column. So it ends up being the leftmost column. So this kind of approach makes it a little manual when we use the VLOOKUP function, right? So only if that rule is satisfied, that is whatever value we are looking up is the leftmost column in the array, then it would work. So let's change it back again. I'm just going to call it order ID, and I'll change it to 1369. Okay, so since the lookup value order ID is the leftmost in the table array, is the leftmost column in the table array, it works perfectly. So this is one of the drawbacks that you have using the VLOOKUP function. So in the next video, we'll understand how we can overcome it using index and match.